This video is strictly for entertainment purposes and creativity's sake. These stories are based upon information that public figures have shared. Therefore, all events are alleged. The discussion here is intentionally done so in the form of questions as opposed to accusations or stated assumptions. This is purely an exercise in speculation and imagination. Hello. Welcome to KandyLand. I will be playing the role of your Konspiritainer. You are free to play along. In this game, we will defy the constraints of time while digging up artifacts to re-examine them in the light. Our main character called himself Kurt, and he had his so-called curtain call in the year 1994. The concept of this game is to question every card. At times, we will find calm in the chaos, and at other times, chaos will consume us. The first and only rule of KandyLand is, there are no rules. There are merely color-coded cards and candy-coded curves. The spinning circle will carry us through a cast of characters, communities, and contemplation. Are you ready to play? Episode 6, Kronological Recordings. The last time we gathered to play KandyLand, we did a quick recap on the first 4 episodes and then came to the conclusion that both of our key characters' bands played or were scheduled to play concerts at 13 of the same California venues from 1989 to 1994. Recently, on the Konspiritainer TikTok channel, which, by the way, if you have not followed me there, or especially on YouTube, please subscribe to one or both of them. I also have a brand new link tree with merch and donation options for research, along with links to other platforms that you can catch my content at. Remember, it's spelled Kon, K-O-N, Spirit, S-P-I-R-I-T, Ainer, A-I-N-E-R, like I contain spirits with a K. Anyhow, a TikTok viewer left a comment that I would like to share in reference to all of the Weezer pre-Blue Album Club dates that I've compared to Nirvana's tour history in the series so far, and I thought it would be quite timely and applicable to share at the beginning of this episode. This Shoe Fits says, Weezer is a 4-piece band. It is common for dive bar bands to go on stage absent a member. A guitarist and singer can be subbed by another member. Matt Sharp is a good singer and knew the songs just as well as Rivers. It's possible they performed without Rivers. Thank you so much for your comments, sir. I couldn't agree more with you, and I have shared that exact same sentiment over and over while researching, but never stated it in a broadcast yet because I believe as we continue playing KandyLand together that we will see an unraveling of not only possible Weezer members filling in, but another potential key character that I believe may have played the perfect stand-in during the band's formation when Rivers Cobain was out touring with Nirvana or recording in Seattle. More on that in another episode. So, with both Kurt and Rivers dwelling in Los Angeles at the same time, what else can be gleaned from their pasts as artists to help us build our case that they may share the same soul? Let's continue exploring KandyLand with another spin. What other details can we find out about both bands that we haven't yet considered? Remember, the red card reveals recordings and artifacts. Since this is our first time landing on red, why don't we kick things off by examining the chronological recording patterns of both Kurt and Rivers. Personally, as someone who has recorded 16 albums in my lifetime, I find these details quite stimulating. Here is a comprehensive curation of every studio session beginning with Nirvana's Love Buzz single and ending with Weezer's Blue Album. Technically, the first Fecal Matter cassette featuring Melvin's drummer Dale Crover contains some Bleach and Incesticide songs on it before those albums were made, but we will omit this release in session due to the fact that it predated the official formation of Nirvana and did not feature Chris Novoselic. April 23, 1988, the band recorded with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle, Washington for the Ted Ed Fred Dale demo session. The song If You Must from this session was featured as track 6 on disc 1 of their box set With the Lights Out. June through September 1988. Nirvana recorded their second time over 4 months, doing 4 separate sessions with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle for the Love Buzz sessions, featuring Chad Channing on drums this time. In addition to the Love Buzz Big Cheese 7-inch single, this session also produced the song Blandest, which was also featured as track 16 on disc 1 of the band's box set. December of 1988, Nirvana headed back to record their third time with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle for the Bleach sessions, again with Chad Channing on drums. This, of course, yielded the band's debut full-length album on Sub Pop Records. Spring of 1989, the band did a one-off session at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington for an exclusive cover of Kiss's Do You Love Me for Hard to Believe, a Kiss covers compilation featuring the Melvins, All, and Tree People, among others, paying tribute to these infamous glam rockers. This was actually the only song they ever recorded with Jason Everman on second guitar, dispelling the myth that he played on Bleach. In addition to Nirvana's cover, they also recorded Dive at this session, which was later included as track 17 on disc 1 of their box set. August 20th and 28th, 1989, Kurt attempted to form a side project called The Jury and had 2 sessions again with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle. This was a blues cover project including songs originally performed by Leadbelly. 3 of the songs would later appear as tracks 18 through 20 on disc 1 of the box set. September 1989, Nirvana recorded their first time with Steve Fisk at the Music Source in Seattle for the Blue Sessions. 3 songs from this session were later included as tracks 21 through 23 on disc 1 of the band's box set. December 1989 through January of 1990, Kurt and Chris found themselves back in the studio with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle for Mark Lanigan's The Winding Sheet sessions. Most notably from this session, both members contributed guitar, bass, and backing vocals to Leadbelly's Where Did You Sleep Last Night, which would later be played again live on Nirvana's MTV Unplugged in New York performance. Kurt also contributed vocals to Down in the Dark from this album. January 2nd and 3rd, 1990, the band returned from a session once again with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle for the Sappy demo session, which was shelved. April 2nd through 6th, 1990, Nirvana recorded their first time with Butch Vig at Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin for what was supposed to be their second Sub Pop full-length album entitled Sheep, which was scrapped. This, of course, was later re-recorded and retitled Nevermind once DGC Records signed the band. The only 2 songs that were released from this session were Nirvana's cover of The Velvet Underground's Here She Comes Now, which was originally on a split 7-inch with the Melvins also covering The Velvet Underground's Venus in Furs. The other song from this session that would eventually see the light of day was Pay to Play, featured on the DGC Rarities compilation in 1994. This song was eventually retitled Stay Away on Nevermind. One other thing to note is that this session was the last recording to feature Chad Channing on drums. July 11th and 24th, 1990. The band did 2 final sessions with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording in Seattle for the Sliver single featuring Dan Peters of Mudhoney on drums. These songs later ended up being released on the Incesticide collection. October 1990. Kurt attended sessions with Mike Lastra at Smegma Studio in Portland, Oregon for the tracking of Earth's debut EP, Extra Capsular Extraction. Kurt contributed vocals on track 2, A Bureaucratic Desire for Revenge, Part 2. October 21st, 1990, Nirvana performed their second of 3 times for John Peel's BBC Radio 1 show. They recorded their rendition of Devo's Turn Around with 3 other cover songs that ended up being released on the Hormoning EP and again later on the Incesticide collection. January 1st, 1991, Nirvana recorded their first time with Craig Montgomery at the Music Source in Seattle for demo sessions that were abandoned. The songs ended up becoming B-sides for the Smells Like Teen Spirit single and this was the first session to feature Dave Grohl on drums, who, as I mentioned in episode 4 of KandyLand, was their sixth and final drummer. May 2nd through 28th, 1991, Nirvana recorded for their second time with Butch Vig at Sound City Studios and Devonshire Studios in Van Nuys and Burbank, California, for their official major label debut and multi-platinum sophomore album, Nevermind. Verse, chorus, verse, and Old Age from these sessions were included as tracks 12 and 13 on disc 2 of the box set. April 7th, 1992, Nirvana recorded for their first time with Barrett Jones at Laundry Room Studios in Seattle for some B-side sessions. The song Oh the Guilt was released on a split with the Jesus Lizard on Chicago's Touch and Go Records, while the others were included on the Lithium single. May of 1992, Weezer recorded their first English Acid demo tape on Rivers Cuomo's 8-track in the garage at the Amherst House in Los Angeles, California. August of 1992, Weezer recorded their second demo, The Kitchen Tape, in the garage at Amherst House in Los Angeles, California, while the drums were tracked in the kitchen. The raw and extremely rare demo of the song Paper Faced from this cassette was also included in the deluxe CD version of the Blue Album in 2004. October 25th and 26th, 1992, Nirvana recorded another Abandoned in Utero demo session with Jack Endino at Word of Mouth Productions in Seattle, Washington. November of 1992, Weezer recorded the real demo tape, aka 1192, which, interestingly enough, was re-released this year on vinyl for Record Store Day. I am now quoting directly from Weezerpedia for my own amusement. The real demo was tracked at a studio, actually a converted garage, called Electric Landlady. Located behind a house at 1311 South Tremaine Avenue in Hollywood, California. The band utilized the facilities without the consent of the studio's owner. John Pikus, drummer for the band El Magnifico and friend of the band, engineered the demo. So according to Weezerpedia, this is the recording that got Weezer signed to DGC Records. November 1992, Kurt recorded a solo session with Barrett Jones at Laundry Room Studio in Seattle for a collaboration with William S. Burroughs, doing spoken word over his guitar playing. The song was entitled The Priest, They Called Him. And again in November of 1992, Kurt attended sessions with the Melvins at Razor's Edge Recording in San Francisco, California for the co-production of their album Houdini. At some point in late 1992, the band did another abandoned demo session with Barrett Jones at Laundry Room Studios in Seattle. While this session was aimed at recording ideas for In Utero, most people are not aware that Dave Grohl recorded pre-Foo Fighters demos for the songs Alone and Easy Target and Floaty, which would later go on to be re-recorded for the 1995 debut self-titled Foo Fighters album. January 2nd through 4th, 1993, Kurt attended sessions with the Melvins at Brilliant Studios in San Francisco, California for the co-production of their album Houdini. He also contributed guitar on the song Sky Pup, as well as percussion on the song Spread Eagle Beagle. January 19th through 21st, 1993, Nirvana demoed In Utero material at BMG Areola Studios in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with Hole in attendance demoing Live Through This material. February 12th through 26th, 1993, Nirvana recorded with Steve Albini at Pachyderm Studios in Cannon Falls, Minnesota for the official In Utero sessions. April 15th, 1993, Weezer recorded with Dale Johnson at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles for an audio engineering class project. This session produced the exclusive B-side, Jamie, which was later released on the DGC Rarities compilation in 1994. This is the only official studio release that you can hear original guitarist Jason Cropper on as well. May 13th, 1993, the band had a one-off mixing session with Scott Litt at Bad Animals Studio in Seattle, Washington to remix both of In Utero's singles, Heart-Shaped Box and All Apologies. August through September 1993, Weezer recorded the entire Blue Album with Rick Ocasek, formerly of The Cars, at Electric Lady Studios in New York City. Electric Ladyland. Electric Landlady? Silly little Weezers. October of 1993, Kurt attended hole sessions with Sean Slade at Triclops Recording in Atlanta, Georgia for the official Live Through This album. November 16th and 17th, 1993, Nirvana practices at SST Inc. rehearsal facility in Weehawken, New Jersey in preparation for their epic MTV Unplugged in New York performance, and then on November 18th, they record it live at Sony Music Studios in New York City. January 28th through 30th, 1994, Nirvana records their final session ever as a band with Adam Casper at Robert Lang Studios in Seattle. This session produces the band's final song, You Know You're Right, released much later as track 1 on their Greatest Hits album in 2002. While this session was aimed at recording new ideas for Nirvana, most people are again not aware that Dave Grohl recorded 2 more pre-Foo Fighters demos. One for Big Me, which would be re-recorded and released as the lead single for the 1995 debut self-titled Foo Fighters album. The second was for February Stars, which would go on to be re-recorded for the legendary 1997 sophomore Foo Fighters album, The Color and the Shape. Wow, talk about pre-planning. July 9th, 1994, Weezer recorded 3 B-sides with Paul Dugray at Ocean Way Recording in Los Angeles. The 3 songs recorded were Michael and Carly, My Eveline, and my personal favorite Weezer song, Suzanne, which was later remixed and included on the Mallrats soundtrack in 1995. This concludes all of our Rivers Cobain recording history from Love Buzz to the Blue Album during the years 1988 to 1994. Note, none of Nirvana's nor Weezer's studio sessions conflict with one another and flow seamlessly. However, to be thorough, 5 of Weezer's alleged and highly questionable live dates do potentially conflict with a few Nirvana sessions. But again, we have established through our dear friend This Shoe Fits from TikTok that someone else could have and, more than likely, was filling in on vocals, if those shows even happened. See episode 3 for more details on some of the pre-Blue Album Club absurdities. At this point, I would like to zoom out from our recording charts and go back to the colorfully hand-drawn tour history graph that I introduced briefly in episodes 3 and 4 of KandyLand. As you can see, the pattern of Nirvana shows starts with low numbers of shows the first couple of years, then gets exponentially larger for the middle 3 years, and almost goes back to the way it started the final 3 years of being a band. To quote the titles of 2 of the most underrated Smashing Pumpkins songs from the Batman and Robin soundtrack, The End is the Beginning is the End, and The Beginning is the End is the Beginning. Is the beginning the end, Kurt? Or is the end the beginning, Rivers? Well, that all depends on our perception, doesn't it? And I perceive that if we examine this chart a little further, it will shed additional light on our recent laundry list of studio recording sessions. Let's go year by year, adding a monthly ratio for perspective's sake. So, in 1987, Nirvana played an estimated total of 7 shows, putting them at an average of 1/2 show per month. In 1988, Nirvana played an estimated total of 26 shows, putting them at an average of 2 shows per month. In 1989, Nirvana played an estimated total of 83 shows, putting them at an average of 7 shows per month. In 1990, Nirvana played an estimated total of 62 shows, putting them at an average of 5 shows per month. In 1991, Nirvana played an estimated total of 92 shows, putting them at an average of 8 shows per month, being the busiest tour itinerary they'd ever encountered with the release of their groundbreaking album, Nevermind, unleashing the culture-shaping Generation X anthem, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Okay, looking at the graph thus far, it is all making sense. But I'm going to pause for a second to reiterate that this next year, as I stated in episode 3, should have and was initially planned to have been their busiest. So, why the extreme reduction in tour dates? Was 1992 really that depressing with all the massive success of Dreams coming to fruition? Or was a new character being born? This of course is where Rivers and Weezer entered the picture. See episode 3 for more details on that and the puzzle piece theory if you have not yet. Back to the graph. And this is where things get dicey. In 1992, Nirvana played an estimated total of only 40 shows, putting them at an average of a mere 3 shows per month. Maybe you're scratching your head like I once did, but let me point out that in late 1991, Nirvana canceled the remainder of their Nevermind European tour, and then in 1992, at the height of their success off of said album, they decided to cancel both of their Nevermind US Spring Tour and Nevermind US November Tour, leaving quite a demand to see the biggest band in the world perform live. Why would they do this? Were they purposely trying to destroy your sweater? Coincidentally, in 1993, Nirvana played an estimated total of only 41 shows, putting them at the same average previously of 3 shows per month. I just said it, but I have to say it again. If you haven't, you might want to see Episode 3 for all of Weezer's pre-Blue Album club dates which were playing out during these 2 years. Finally, in 1994, Nirvana played a total of 23 shows, putting them at an average of 2 shows per month, just like in 1988. Ending almost right back where they started. A rebirth, perhaps? Maybe we're not done here. Why don't we see how Weezer fits into the chart? In 1992, Weezer played an estimated total of 36 shows, putting them at an average of 3 shows per month. Noted. Then, in 1993, Weezer played an estimated total of 40 shows, putting them at the same average previously of 3 shows per month. Check. And lastly, in 1994, Weezer played a total of 10 more shows before the release of their debut self-titled Blue album in May on DGC Records, the same label as Nirvana. Only the last 2 of these 10 dates happened just after Kurt had his final curtain call in April. But that's not the full picture, because if we add those 10 dates to all of Weezer's 1994 Blue album tour, we get an estimated total of 149 shows, putting them at an average of almost 12.5 shows per month. With both bands' dates stacked like this, for curiosity's sake, of course, doesn't the pattern continue to look like a steady incline as opposed to a dramatic decline? I mean, if KandyLand were like vaudeville, then our character Kurt would be a regular Houdini, wouldn't he? Or should I say our new character, Rivers? With the right hand, a little distraction, and with the left, a little magic trick, perhaps?
You know, it's really hard to believe everything you read.